Chapter 8. The new U.S. Navy recruit. Never been happier. Ability is of little account without opportunity. Napoleon, French Emperor. It was March 18 Sup/Sup 1959, early Sunday morning, when Tony left Orion, Bataan aboard the local La Mallorca bus bound for Manila. He then transferred to another bus named Salog Transit bound for Cavite City. Tony left home with a bag full of dreams that he has been secretly nurturing for many years, with a promise he made to himself, with God's help, to be the best amongst all ages. He arrived in Cavite City and spent the night with his Auntie Liwanag, who had relocated to the place. The following day, March 19, 1959, Tony arrived at 8 in the morning at the U.S. Naval Station in Cavite City, Cavite. As scheduled, all 11 of the new recruits met and marched towards the recruiting office and officially took the oath to enter the United States Navy. After a series of indoctrinations, each one of them was issued 4 sets of dungaree uniforms. They joined the other sailors who were recruited months before them. For the first time in his life, Tony had his own fitted shoes, with socks, not one dangling or borrowed, 8 pairs of shirts, 8 pairs of underpants, and a pair of athletic shoes with socks to go with it. And for the first time also, he slept on a bed with a mattress. They were then taken to their berthing spaces called Recruit Enlisted Barracks while they waited for a military transport ship to arrive from America to take them to the United States. The recruits assembled each time before heading towards the general mess hall, where they ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Tony was amazed with the mess hall's cleanliness and display of food selections available. They always started with a main entree of meat, pork, chicken or fish, followed by side dishes of potatoes and vegetables, then salads, and finally a choice of dessert. The drinks were aplenty, with all kinds of soda, water, coffee and tea offered on a help-yourself basis. The chow line was unbelievable in length, about 24 feet long, and the food was ample enough to satisfy everyone. And everything tasted great. It was Tony's first time to see the chow line, a mind-boggling banquet of delicious dishes spread enticingly on a serving counter of epic proportions. Tony and his fellow Filipino-American mates went at it with gusto, even capping the meal with the shared childhood memory of sweetening their glass of chilled milk with sugar, which drew laughter from others. And why not? The recruits were simply following the sign that said, "Help yourself to as much as you want." But the chow line also had its mishaps. Tony took a lot of ice cream on the serving line, not knowing it was mayonnaise. When Tony tasted it, it was sour. It was at that time when a white American guard on duty, who was watching over them, announced with a loud voice, everyone should eat whatever they had taken from the chow line. No wasting of food. All must be eaten, otherwise you'll have to face the consequences. Tony was so shaken by the warning and feared he could be discharged if he were to throw away his leftovers. Therefore, he forced himself to eat all the mayonnaise he took, only to throw it up later in the bathroom commode. The transport ship that was to take them abroad had taken weeks to arrive. Then on May 8, 1959, all 136 recruits finally departed for the United States. Tony was among the sailors and military dependents aboard the MSTS Barrett, a U.S. Army transport. They traveled in the Pacific Ocean from Manila with stopovers in Agana, Guam and Honolulu, Hawaii to pick up military dependents, with the final ship destination in the U.S. Naval Station, Treasure Island, San Francisco, California. Sailing across the Pacific Ocean took them 17 days. He was reminded of his experience years ago aboard a Basnig fishing boat, when the sea was also rough and choppy. They crossed the international date line going east and gained a day. Tuesday became Monday again. He was always seasick each day. Tony would always volunteer himself for working parties even though he was seasick like a dog. His aim was to learn as many jobs as he could possibly do. Whenever a volunteer was asked, he always raised his hands as high as he could. He never appeared to be scared and always welcomed each day's challenge. That probably set him apart from others. As the ship passed the famous Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, Tony was so impressed by the magnificent beauty of the buildings ahead and the surrounding natural landscape. Breathing the sea breeze of America and the crisp coolness of its air was so compelling, It rekindled the imagination of the eager young man with the big dream. The ship docked at the U.S. Naval Station in Treasure Island, a small man-made island between the city of San Francisco and the city of Alameda for their final stop. The recruits were then taken off the ship and brought to the enlisted receiving barracks for a few days' stay. He heard for the first time the Star-Spangled Banner national anthem being played every morning by the U.S. Navy band during the 8 a.m. flag-raising ceremonies. The first time he got off the ship, he uttered a solemn prayer. "Today is the happiest day of my life," Tony told himself upon his arrival in America. His first course of action after getting off the ship was to go down on his knees and kiss the American soil and say thanks be to God for allowing me to enter the land of the free and a new world of opportunity. Amen. Later that evening, his eldest brother Ernesto came to see him at the barracks and brought him to Manila Cafe on Kearny Street in the city of San Francisco. That was where Filipino sailors hung out during their liberty to have a taste of Filipino dishes. He had his first Filipino meal in America. He saw the tall buildings of San Francisco. With a heart overflowing with gratitude, he would always make a reverent sign of the cross whenever he passed by imposing buildings, thinking they were Catholic churches, although he wondered why there were no religious statues outside. He also noticed the different modes of transportation, like buses, cars, underground subways, trains, and airplanes. He was amazed to see the various tones of skin of white Americans and their different colors of hair, like blonde, brunettes, redheads, and others. Seeing them for the first time in his life made him think he was on a different planet. On their third day, after a breakfast meal at the General Mess Hall, the entire contingent of recruits from the Philippines was bused to the San Francisco train station, from where they headed south to San Diego, California. The train ride was very comfortable, air-conditioned, and even had bathroom facilities. Once there, the recruits were taken from the San Diego train station and bused to the U.S. Naval Training Center in San Diego, one of the two largest Navy boot camps in the U.S. The new recruits would undergo 9 weeks of rigorous training from June to July 1959. It included lots of marching and physical fitness exercises. In addition, they attended classroom training on seamanship and firefighting exposure. Exams were given every Friday. On Sundays, they were free but had to do their laundry. Tony tried to learn the language as quickly as possible and prepared himself for any assignment. He learned military discipline, hard work, obedience, how to get along with others, and above all, punctuality. Their pay back then was $78 a month, and Tony had planned to send $50 to help the family that he left behind. During their midweek training, each company had to experience a mess cooking week. Tony was assigned to wash dirty pots and pans in a big sink. After scraping the pots for food debris, it would go into a big sink before final rinse. Unfortunately, Tony, who was not used to this work, suffered an accident when the slippery water rubber steam hose dangerously got away from his hand and swung back, scalding his chest. He suffered second-degree burns to his torso and was confined for 2 weeks in the hospital. Because of his injuries, Tony's body was completely wrapped up in gauze slathered with burn medicine. The company commander, Chief Petty Officer Freeman, assigned to Tony's company number 219, wanted to hold him back and be assigned to another company because he missed 2 weeks of training. But Tony begged him not to do so and promised to study the books while confined so he could later take the scheduled exam. "And if I fail the exam, set me back," he proposed. Tony was given the study materials as requested, and he took and passed all the required exams. From August to September 1959, the Filipino as well as African American recruits who graduated from the boot camp were sent to attend the Steward Apprentice School, TAP, at the Service Schools Command in San Diego, California. Unbeknownst to many recruits from the Philippines, a treaty signed in 1947 by both presidents of the U.S. and the Philippines mandated that Filipinos recruited in the Philippines can only serve as stewards in the Navy. It was an easy course for Tony. The lessons were on how to be a home caretaker, like cleaning, dusting, and polishing furniture. They were also taught how to use vacuum cleaners, wash dishes, serve in a restaurant setting, do laundry, and above all, be an obedient valet worker for an admiral of the United States Navy and his family. This job description was never mentioned to them when they were applying to become a U.S. Navy seaman. Tony tried quickly to improve his English speaking skill by studying the proper idioms, slang, colloquialism and grammar. He loved to read books during his spare time and copy newscasters like Walter Cronkite, Huntley and Brinkley, Regis Philbin and many others. He even confessed he tried to talk to the posts for practice at times, although the posts did not answer back. For the first time in his life, Tony saw with his own eyes the racial divide, prejudice and discrimination by the white Americans against the black Americans. On their first stop in Phoenix, Arizona, he noticed that at every stop at the Greyhound station, there were signs on the front doors for colored only and whites only. Not knowing the racial history of America, Tony was confused as he was wearing a Navy uniform. After going back and forth on which door to use, the black bus driver called his attention and told him to use the whites only door because Tony was not colored. He was also afraid to order food as he was not yet used to the English language. Again, the same bus driver was good enough to help him order the food, which were mostly hamburgers. He also told him to eat his meal at the whites only section, for again, he was not considered colored. It took him several more stops on the road to learn the hard lesson about race from person of color and the meaning of segregation. He was so curious about racial prejudice that he read books later in life on how hard it was for blacks to endure life in America for hundreds of years, and what the passing of the Emancipation Proclamation and other civil rights amendments in Congress have meant to racial relations and equality in America. Later on, in October 1959, Tony found out that if one graduated in the top 10 of the Steward School, he would be assigned to work in an admiral's private quarters, PQ, in the Navy. Since Tony was one of the top 10 in his class, he was selected to work for a rear admiral in Boston, Massachusetts. Tony was one of 6 personal stewards that had to take care of the needs of the admiral and his immediate family, serving them their meals and attending to the officers' well-being in his private quarters. In mid-October of 1959, when Tony reported to the admiral's private quarters, he met a fellow Filipino chief steward named Chief Foon along with 5 other staff on duty. The steward's primary job was as a housekeeper, cleaning, dusting and vacuuming the whole house, and the bathrooms, making up the beds, doing the laundry, shining the shoes, silverwares and face bowls, serving meals, emptying the trash and garbage, walking the dogs, and running errand for the household members of the admiral. His expectations to carve an exciting career with the Navy were crushed. It was with deep prayers to God that Tony hoped that even if he started his Navy career as a steward, he would be blessed to become an officer someday. It would take hard work, patience and outstanding performance, overcoming obstacles in the way to achieve his goals. Besides, his services, on a salary of $78 a month, could command a higher value in the Philippines. However, Tony, after working for a few days as a steward, was bothered by his job assignment. He believed he was overqualified for the steward's job and could do better. After getting acclimated to his job, Tony on his first night on duty prepared the formal dining table for the admiral, wife and 2 growing children. The admiral seemed happy with his performance along with his family. After dinner, Tony started to clear the dining while the family was having dessert. Tony was in the kitchen carefully washing the expensive gold-plated dishes with the admiral's name gilded in gold. He was in deep thought and was so depressed about what he was doing. He thought of ways to get out of the steward's menial task that he didn't like. It was at that moment that he allowed one of the plates to drop from his hands, breaking it into pieces. The loud noise was heard by the whole family. On the second night, Tony did the same thing again. On the third night, unbeknownst to Tony, the admiral's wife was watching him closely through the open kitchen door. She saw Tony drop the plate intentionally. She reported him to her husband. The admiral then called his flag lieutenant and directed him to reassign Tony the next day to any ship available. Tony was then informed the next morning by his supervisor, Chief Foon, that he was being transferred to a ship named the USS Barry, DD 933. He considered it as his day of emancipation as he felt he was released from the bondage of slavery.